Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from Shadow of Intent entitled Imperium Delirium. This is the fifth full-length studio album from this American symphonic, melodic, technical, death metal, deathcore crew. They're a lot of things all together, all at once, simultaneously, and I know what some of y'all are thinking. You hear the words symphonic and deathcore in the same sentence, suddenly people get scared, suddenly people get wary, suddenly people just write off bands entirely because in the post-Pain Remains, Lorna Shore world, symphonic deathcore is the big hot new thing, and everything just kind of sounds and feels like a derivative of Pain Remains. As a result of that, especially because some bands are going out of their way to specifically copy that exact style. But Shadow of Intent is not one of those bands. Nuh-uh. No sirree Bob. They've been kicking around for just over a decade now, and they've been doing this specific style of deathcore long before Lorna Shore even thought of it. And in my opinion, they've been consistently doing it better than Lorna Shore and frankly a lot of other symphonic deathcore bands out there. With 2019's Melancholy in particular standing out as a real masterclass in how exactly to write, produce, and execute this style of music without it feeling overproduced or pretentious or too much. It was so good that, in retrospect, 2022's Elegy just didn't stand a fucking chance. I mean, it certainly tried its best. It's a solid album, all things considered, but it just didn't measure up to everything that Melancholy gave us. It failed, at least for me, to deliver those same kinds of thrills. Thankfully, the same cannot be said for Imperium Delirium. I'm gonna let y'all know right off the bat, Shadow of Intent have knocked it out of the goddamn park. There are some little issues here and there that we will address later on in the review. But, for the most part, if you loved Melancholy, and if you love Shadow of Intent in general, and if you love symphonic deathcore and you want something that feels unique and different simultaneous to that, boom, this is it. Shadow of Intent have delivered probably their most creative and dynamic album musically to date, and also maybe one of the best deathcore albums of 2025 thus far. This album just doubles down on what people love and want from Shadow Intent. It just gives us more of everything. More melodrama, more darkness, more crazy dynamics and theatrics, more twists and turns and crazy little hidden nuggets of flavor and spice. And everyone in the band is just pushing themselves further and further and further. Like, Ben Deer's clean vocals are consistently way better on this album than they were on Elegy. And, you know, his screams and his roars and his gutturals are more varied across the album as well, and more monstrous and menacing and powerful. And the overall diversity and flexibility of guitars, bass, drums, synthesizers, horns, and strings, all the orchestral and symphonic stuff, it's honestly pretty incredible. It's just so cool and so satisfying and so brutal. I especially love that, like, I couldn't ever really predict what exactly was going to happen next. Like, on cuts like They Murdered Sleep and Infinity of Horrors, the combination of, like, lush, almost gothic keyboards and, like, soaring strings and guitars and very triumphant guitar licks and, like, crushing, towering walls of, like, percussion and blast beats and rhythm guitar and bass, and, like, this combination of, like, almost spoken word and almost, like, demonic kind of, like, deep guttural vocals. It brings to mind, like, the bombast and the darkness and the kind of energy I expect from, like, Dimmu Borgir or Cradle of Filth. And then Flying the Black Flag is filled with these bouncy, meaty, muscular, infectious grooves all the way through. I really like how they weave in more technical kind of guitar playing and songcraft as well. And I also like how they use synthesizers later on in the cut, not in like a Brand of Sacrifice kind of way, more in a way that reminds me of like Japanese electronicore stuff like Crossfaith. Like, I really like the sound and the feel of the synths here. It has this really kind of like hype energy to it. And then Apocalyptic Canvas goes into like full-blown Dream Theater style instrumental prog metal with all of these wild, over-the-top, flamboyant guitar licks and solos all over the place, some rumbling funky bass, some crazy, nuanced, but still really groovy metal percussion riding underneath all of it. The very subtle and simple use of like this almost kind of like spacey cosmic synth work and choral vocal stuff gives this thing a bit of a more celestial, heavenly kind of feel and vibe as well that I think adds to the overall atmosphere of the cut. And honestly, songs like No Matter the Cost, Vehement Draconian Vengeance, the album's closing number and title track, Imperium Delirium, all rank as some of the biggest, most action-packed, explosive, dramatic cuts that Shadow of Intent have ever put together. This is symphonic deathcore reaching its full potential right here. Like symphonic deathcore at its most impactful, its most cinematic, and its most exhilarating. And it's just straight up cool as fuck to see Corpse Grinder of Cannibal Corpse fame pop up on Feeding the Meat Grinder, lending his uniquely monstrous death metal voice to an equally monstrous cut. I never knew I wanted Cannibal Corpse and symphonic deathcore mixed together until now, but now I do know, and I'm kind of fucking with it. And now on to the negatives. There aren't a lot, and they aren't even that negative, but nevertheless. While the album itself isn't necessarily long, clocking in at only 54 minutes, you do start to feel the weight of that runtime nevertheless near the end. And I think it's because there's just so much going on that at a certain point, even if it's not actively an overwhelming album, it does just get tiring a little bit in those very final moments as you reach the finish line. More importantly, I found that a byproduct of the album being so busy, having so much happening all the time, was that the music had trouble breathing, and it was stuffy, and it felt muddy, and things occasionally blurred together with everything being stacked and compressed on top of one another. Sometimes it did just kind of sound like Shadow of Intent were trying to force everything through, like maybe there was something wrong with my speakers as a result of that as well. But, to be fair, something like this is inevitable to an extent when you have an album like this where it is so big and there is so much going on. And in Shadow of Intent's defense, everything is pretty well balanced and everything still sounds really, really good. I honestly think I'm going to go with a 4.5 out of 5 on this, warts and all, mind you, small warts, but nevertheless, I think this is an incredible record. I think Shadow of Intent have really outdone themselves. They've pushed themselves musically in every single way imaginable. They have matched 2019's Melancholy, in my opinion. I think I still like that album a little bit more, but, you know, to be fair, this one just came out. And honestly, because of all the little nuances on the record, all the little twists and turns and like stylistic diversions with all the flamboyancy and flair and cinematic grandeur and such, I feel like I'm finally hearing something kind of new from deathcore. Like, there's so much symphonic deathcore out there, but so much of it just sounds like Pain Remains 2.0. Diet Pain Remains, Diet Lorna Shore. Shadow of Intent continue to evolve and try new things and refine their sound and refine their craft. And as a result, they have established themselves as a genuinely pretty unique force within modern deathcore. There's really no reason not to check this out, in my opinion, unless you really just despise deathcore, especially modern deathcore. I will absolutely be jamming it over and over and over again. I look forward to possibly nabbing it on vinyl, and I'm extremely excited to see not only how Shadow of Intent follow this up in the future, but also to see how the larger deathcore audience responds to this. Once again, 4.5 out of 5, arguably the band's best album to date, inarguably one of the best deathcore albums of the year so far. Definitely check it out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be, contrary to very popular belief. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here. Check out some more videos right here. Join us on Discord. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.